Welcome to Graeme Games. My name is Graeme. This is a game. Today I'm playing Crimson Dawn. Literally yesterday, I played Vampire Survivors for the first time on the channel. This is someone's attempt to do something unique with that concept. This idle game where you automatically attack hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies pour in, and you just have to survive for as long as possible. This is someone taking that very simple concept and trying to juice it up a little bit and add more variety to the gameplay. This is an incredibly early beta. I want to emphasize that. I kind of had to beg a little bit that the developer was okay with me showing this off at all. So keep in mind, this is far, far, far from a finished product. But I'm very, very curious to see, because Vampire Survivors, part of the appeal for people has been how simplistic that game is. So now I'm excited to see it expanded upon. So I haven't played this at all, so I'm very unfamiliar with what's going on. Roland is the only character I have available. You have apparently starting weapon choices. I'll go with the basics, the axe, and what seems to be, I don't know, a frost-based thing. Hold for 5 minutes, and I guess, this is increasing difficulty, it appears. I'll start at the most basic, so I won't go with anything crazier than that. The blacksmith, I apparently start with a bunch of resources. I don't know if that's just for the sake of the beta. Increases base damage. Maybe I won't actually apply the upgrades yet, since I probably am not meant to have 1,000 resources, and we'll play the game basically first and then play around with the upgrades and the upgrading tree here, and I can apply upgrades to the weapons and things that I am currently not actually using. I could use the market to trade up resources if I was short on anything specific. There is the tavern where I could unlock additional characters. So Huskarl is the fearless warrior, an expert in axes and spears, a sorcerer, a trickster, a druid, a landsknecht, and I can't see the rest of them. And training, I guess maybe you could level up people. I'm picturing the daycare in Pokemon. The farmer or whatever I can't interact with. So we will be going out and doing a very basic mission type, the most standard there is. The attack type that I'm doing appears to have very little to do with axes. Oh god. It kind of seems like the magic spell is the only thing that is doing anything. Is that my axe? My madness went up. I'm a little more angry all of a sudden. My health and my experience are both at the bottom there. I'm taking a fair amount of damage. I only have to live for 5 minutes. That's doesn't really feel like a very tall order. So these ghouls are so dumpy. The spiders are big, but the ghouls, they're no neck. They're receded. There's something very comical about the way their face and posture is all scrunched up. They're kind of hunched over walking around. I'm really trying to keep a close eye on the cooldowns so I can try to understand what it is my axe is doing. Maybe my axe just influences the damage of this main attack type that I have. I kind of want things to be grouped together because that's how I'm gonna hurt the most things, I think. So there's not leveling up in the same way. It's not a level up where you choose an upgrade. My madness is going up, which is presumably affecting things like my damage output or cooldowns. But in this game, it doesn't appear that you actually choose those things, because it's more about the meta progression that's happening after a specific round is played out. So it's taking the infinite procedural aspect and turning it more into a roguelite thing where you have unlocks and what you do outside of a given run is more important. It kind of feels like maybe it's designed for me to lose this first showdown. If it doesn't get any crazier than this, I've covered nearly half, not quite half the time. If I can hold out not much longer. And so it's rather than collecting experience. Oh god, I'm taking damage. It's more about collecting these resources, which you can apparently grab from a distance. That's very, very handy. And then I would apply those, make myself stronger, come back, try again. I've taken so much damage. It's very, very, very unlikely I live through this first attempt. I'm trying to really squeeze through the gaps, but it's just spawning more and more things around me. Dang. So not a ton of loot, not a ton of stuff. I have some sort of progress bar here that I'm building up as well. Let me swap out to the spear, and I'll swap to a different thing entirely. I have one thing to spend. Is that what that means? Increases damage of axes. I had one to spend. Well, now I should probably stick with the axe, or else I'm not actually going to get that benefit. But I really didn't understand how the axe worked anyways. So increased damage. I would not even be able to afford this upgrade yet, because I only gained 17, 23, and 20, so I wouldn't even be able to afford that one. So it'd take a few runs. But I can increase the damage, so I might as well. Rate of attack, might as well. Throw distance. He's supposed to be throwing those axes? Fly speed, amount of axes thrown in a row, sure. And increased damage dealt by axes over the course of a distance. I'm going a little overboard. Maybe I don't spend on every possible thing. Magic orbs, attack rate and base damage. I'll upgrade those just to test it out. I will stick with the main base character. Yeah, I think I can throw myself straight back into a standard area. So survive 5 minutes or kill 2,500 enemies, which is kind of a lot. Oh, it shows you if you succeed how much experience you will gain through that. That's cool. That's cool. So you can kind of try and target things a little more. You have to be able to stay alive long enough to fight the boss, stay in a specific zone for 5 minutes, or slay the Crimson Servitor, which I'm guessing is one of those characters. But then there's all this other stuff apparently going on at that point. You are able to earn far more resources, I think is all that's saying, is the resources you earn scales up like crazy. You can unlock additional weapon slots. So the way that in Vampire Survivor there's the axe. Was I just not seeing it before? What the heck? It was just impossible to... Is it just because it moves so quickly? Yeah, I think that's all it is that it's just a weirdly impossible thing to see. I don't like the orb very much. Between the axe having a kind of a crappy cooldown and the orb requiring me to be very near things, this is difficult as hell to actually make use of. You really got to risk it a lot here. But by doing it this way, you do kind of collect the resources immediately. It's not very consistently true, is it? I keep getting pushed out of range to pick up the stuff that I want. Who knows? Maybe this will have me playing more cautiously or something. So the axe flies out and back, so I think it carves a pretty deadly line through things in both directions. I think I liked the other skill better. It just felt like it did more often. Didn't require me to just stand directly where everything is coming for me. Oh, that was brutal. Very, very difficult to punch through because of how infrequently any of my attacks are doing anything. But what I wanted was to squeeze back down to the bottom here in order to grab up like a little bit of everything. As long as I do this, if I kind of just like do this tight little oval pattern, that's how I'm thinking I could make the most out of this. Honestly, wasn't as much resources there to earn as I thought there would have been at that stage. Now this is really hard to go wide of this big ball of ghouls and goblins and barely squeezing through. This is the halfway point again where the amount of things spawning starts to ramp up pretty significantly. It kind of started to feel like in the last attempt, the further away I got from like the center, or just if I just tried to book it one direction, then it really just spawned enemies like crazy. But that might have just been a clock thing, like I had been playing long enough for that to be the case. But it makes me not want to try to just ditch, like just run out crazy in one direction. See, I'm trying to, I'm gonna die. I tried to push through so I could do my oval thing again. It's a little too crowded to try to achieve any of that right now. We have the trickster. Let's try the trickster out. Let's try a different character. So I will swap you out with the arrow, I guess is what that is. And there's some sort of spear thing. But I'm going to go and like pump up the upgrades on this sort of stuff. It's lightning, increased base damage as well. Okay. Cast rate, amount of monsters hit, base damage, cast rate, amount of things hit, amount of lightnings, base damage, amount of monsters hit by lightning in a row, not a raw, and in more lightnings. And then this is like an arrow, right? Base damage of arrows dealt on same target. Speed of arrows, damage by arrows. Like, I'm just gonna jack all this stuff up. Additional piercing, more damage, attack rate, damage attack rate, and amount of arrows. If it's gonna give me the resources, then we might as well play around with things. Oh, you can kind of like track the meta progression of your characters here. They have their specific loadouts. Increased damage of knives. I guess I'm not using a knife. Would this count as a knife? I should probably check that. Maybe that's a knife. It's a dagger. The trickster was good with arrows and knives, so I'm okay with that. I will leave you with the arrow. That's already where I put the resources. I will push to a higher difficulty. Is that too crazy? Am I going too crazy there? If I'm pushing all the upgrades in, I already dumped all the upgrades in. Let's do it. Let's go for the boss. We're just trying to like show things off. Incorrect. Oh no, I forgot to actually switch off to a Lynn. There we go. Now we got the actual proper character. Ooh. Now's the amount of like damage and offense where I can kind of just camp it out a little bit. I might as well run around and collect these resources. But we're getting a stronger idea of what the game looks like once you've actually upgraded yourself. And this character is still at like a base level where I haven't invested in their skill tree or anything. This is entirely just on upgrading the arrows and the lightning. And I'm obviously jumping a lot of steps. I'm jumping way forward here. This would take a long time to accumulate the resources necessary to upgrade all that amount of stuff. But now, once you are at that point, it's kind of a funny exponential thing where collecting resources is now no longer a problem, because I can just walk my way straight over to it and nothing will stand in my way. again, seems like a good opportunity to reiterate how early this is in development. But I just thought it was really interesting the ways that this game is working to add a more involved strategic managerial side to what is a very simple base game concept. So the core of Vampire Survivors is still here, and then there's plenty of ways that it's being expanded upon, and I'm sure that'll only continue to grow. This isn't even like a public demo or anything yet, and it's already making itself distinct in a few meaningful ways. So there will be a link down below in case people are interested and want to check it out for themselves, follow along. I believe the intent is for it to be similarly priced to Vampire Survivors, at least to begin with, so like in that $3 range. Maybe as the game expands, that'll become more expensive, but it'll be another easy game for people to get into, especially for everyone out there who's like 100% in Vampire Survivors and is just looking for kind of more of the same. Even now, I'm starting to get crowded in on my... the arrows having the piercing is potentially the most significant thing. Watching them carve through so many enemies is making a big difference. But even now, only just a couple minutes into this level, things are still accumulating at a rate in which it's starting to feel a little crowded. I basically am unstoppable. I can kind of just go wherever I want and have some level of certainty that the things that are in my way will just die as I approach. But it's starting to get crowded. I'm quite curious how things will look once we encounter the supposed boss at the end. I wish it was counting for me how many things I'd killed, because right now I have literally no idea. Oh my god. I don't know how close I am to killing the 2,500 that I'm supposedly targeting. I don't really know where to go. It's starting to get a little too boxed in there. There's a nice open-looking path up here. Let me just squeeze out, gather up a bunch of resources. I don't actually know. I think it's these little red gem crystals, like 3-pronged crystals, that are actually the experience, and everything else is gold and resources, but I've a little bit lost track. Yes, yeah, the red things are definitely what's allowing me to level up. Level 16, level 17, and 1 more minute to the boss. I think we'll be fine. I kind of want to sit still for a second and just see... No, they're like progressively closing in. They're getting closer. Yeah, you do have to keep moving. It gets a little too crowded, but you can see them all spawning into the side there. Like, if whatever direction I move, it just continues to put new enemies in front of me. So it's not like you're ever going to escape anything. There's kind of this cool claustrophobic aspect to it that, like, there is no escape. It will just perpetually be an infinite spawning of new things for you to overcome, and you just gotta try to find your best route forward. I think I could create a gap for myself. Oh, there's something opened up for me. But then as soon as it spawns in more stuff, you're just kind of boned anyways. Here's the boss coming in. Hold for 0 seconds. Oh my god. Oh, I had to live for 5 minutes. Then I have to... Then it adds the new enemy type. Now I have to kill 2,500. So that's why it wasn't counting things. It's like a progressive series of tasks. And so in that difficulty scaling, you would have to work through all of that. It's live for 5 minutes, then kill 2,500 things, then slay the boss, then hold down a zone for a certain amount of time. That's a really interesting approach to it, and setting those your own goalposts, essentially. Like, where do you want this to cut off before you redeem everything that you managed to collect and go spend it for upgrades? Because, like, if you're gonna struggle your way through, maybe it's not worth the challenge. You should be starting and focusing on the lower levels where you can comb in resources more reliably and then spend that on upgrades instead of challenging yourself, barely surviving and failing to collect a meaningful number of resources. So it gives you kind of some decision-making aspects of where you're going to actually commit your time to. I'll be quite curious how many resources I come out the other side, because just my attempts that were only a few minutes long on the easiest difficulty, I was only raking in 15 to 20 of each resource, which was like not enough really to invest in most upgrades. So it would take a couple attempts at any given difficulty just to afford one upgrade to make that easier. The way it unfolds is interesting. I maybe like the randomness of your items and leveling up and that sort of incremental rollout and decision making of which, do you take a new item, do you level up, do you take a power up, that exists in Vampire Survivors. Because right now, I've already done all that, and it's just a matter of surviving. And so the excitement of finding a treasure chest, of the randomness of like, ooh, what's gonna upgrade next, toying around with the builds mid-run, because if it lets you upgrade your whip a bunch of times, then maybe that's where you choose to put your focus in. So there is a boss that it's pointing me towards, and there's a new enemy type. But yeah, I've already done all that. So it lets you focus on playing the game in Crimson Dawn, but it also means that there's like nothing for me to do here. That was it? That counted? I killed it? Oh my god, the multiple level ups and hundreds of resources by pushing through all that. But at this point now, I've upgraded that full tree. So there'd be the ability to upgrade, knives more, knife and arrows fly further, your movement speed going up. Like, those are significant changes taking place. But because I've already done this full tree, which honestly, now that I earned in the scale of hundreds, you would be able to upgrade these entire trees after like one run like that. Now there's like nowhere left for that to go. So I think there's something important there, that within the run, there needs to be more variety, changing things as you're playing, some sort of decision-making process of where you commit your time and resources in the moment when you're fighting. Because it's really cool to expand this genre of game and add additional managerial things and choose how you want to spend your money. There's obviously new features coming, but in the moment, in the battle, all I really had to do was stand around and wait to win. So there wasn't a ton. It wasn't a ton for me to do there. And so that's my main takeaway, is I would like to see a balance. I know they're trying to distinguish themselves from Vampire Survivors, but I think it's important to maintain that sort of unpredictable, roguelike, every run is different quality, in addition to the meta progression elements. So that's my major bit of feedback for this. Guys, you can go wishlist it down below. It always helps out developers immensely, because Steam is then more likely to recommend the game to people, and it all just kind of snowballs from there. So if you're at all interested, if you've enjoyed Vampire Survivors, I recommend that. I'll keep an eye on this game. If or when major updates come about, then it could be fun to circle back to and see how it's changed. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I hope to see you again soon.